Before the empire, before the sultans and palaces, there was only a tribe. In the harsh borderlands of Anatolia, where the crumbling Byzantine Empire met the fractured remains of Seljuk power, small Turkic clans fought for survival. Among them was a leader named Ertugrul, a warrior of obscure origins, who led his tribe westward after centuries of Mongol invasions shattered the Islamic world. He served as a vassal to the Seljuks, earning land on the frontier and the right to fight under their banner. But what he passed to his son was far more than land, it was a dream. That son was Osman, a man of both steel and vision. Around 1299, he declared independence from his Seljuk overlords, founding a new principality, the Ottoman Beylik. The name came from him Osman. In Arabic is Ottoman, giving rise to the Ottoman identity. At first, it was nothing but a small band of Ghazis, or holy warriors, raiding infidel lands for survival. But Osman carried something deeper than mere ambition. He believed that it was the duty of the faithful to expand Islam by the sword. With every victory, his legend grew. And legends, when wrapped in faith and fire, become unstoppable. The early Ottomans were more than warriors, they were ideologues in armor. Their rapid rise wasn't just military. It was spiritual. They embraced the title of Ghazis, Islamic holy warriors tasked with defending and expanding the faith. On the crumbling edge of Christian Byzantium, this ideology became a powerful engine for conquest. Every raid, every village taken, every castle burned, it all carried religious legitimacy. The sword was not only a weapon of war, it was a tool of divine justice. This fusion of faith and expansionism would define Ottoman power for centuries. Osman's son, Orhan, inherited more than a tribe, he inherited momentum. Under his rule, the Ottomans took their first major city, Bursa. In 1326, it became the new capital and the first sign that this was more than a warrior band, it was becoming a state. Orhan established a standing army, a coinage system, and laid the groundwork for governance rooted in Islamic principles. He married into Byzantium, allied with neighboring emirs, and created an empire in embryo. What started as a frontier principality was transforming into something far greater, a new caliphate in the making. In 1354, an earthquake struck the Gallipoli Peninsula, weakening the Byzantine fortifications along the Dardanelles. To many, it was a natural disaster. To the Ottomans, it was a divine invitation. Seizing the moment, Sultan Orhan's son, Suleiman Pasha, led Ottoman forces across the strait and captured Gallipoli, establishing the empire's first permanent foothold in Europe. It was a turning point in history. For the first time, a Muslim power had carved out land on the Christian continent, not as raiders, but as conquerors to stay. From there, the advance into the Balkans was relentless. Cities fell, fortresses crumbled. Orthodox Christian kingdoms, weakened by infighting and exhausted by centuries of crusades and plague, offered little resistance. To the local populations, the Ottomans were both terror and salvation. They brought taxation and discipline, but also religious tolerance, especially for Christians and Jews. Under Murad I, the Ottomans expanded deeper into Europe, culminating in the bloody Battle of Kosovo, 1389, a clash that would become legend in both Muslim and Christian memory. The message was clear. The sword of Islam now cast a shadow over Europe. When Bayezid I, son of Murad I, took the throne, the Ottomans were no longer a frontier state, they were an emerging empire. Nicknamed Yildirim, or the Thunderbolt, Bayezid ruled with explosive speed and ambition. He crushed remaining Turkish rivals in Anatolia and imposed Ottoman supremacy across the Balkans. In 1396, at the Battle of Nicopolis, he delivered a crushing blow to a coalition of European crusaders, reaffirming that Christian Europe could not halt the Ottoman tide. With each victory, the sultans began to adopt the symbols of empire, courts, laws, and divine right. But with expansion came overreach. Bayezid laid siege to Constantinople, the symbolic heart of the Christian East, hoping to finally claim the city. Yet before he could succeed, disaster struck. From the east came a force unlike any other, the conqueror Tamerlane, Temür, a brutal warlord from Central Asia. At the Battle of Ankara in 1402, Temür shattered the Ottoman army and captured Bayezid himself. The Sultan died in captivity, humiliated. The empire, still in its adolescence, was suddenly leaderless and broken. What followed was chaos, a civil war between Bayezid's sons that nearly tore the Ottomans apart. The defeat at Ankara in 1402 could have been the end. With Bayezid dead and his sons locked in a vicious power struggle, the Ottoman state fractured into competing fiefdoms. For over a decade, what had once been a rising empire teetered on the edge of collapse. Neighboring Christian and Muslim powers seized lost lands, and many in Europe believed the Turkish threat had passed. But they underestimated the dynasty's resilience. Out of the chaos rose one of Bayezid's lesser-known sons, Mehmed I, a diplomat as much as a warrior. Mehmed reunited the shattered territories, balanced rival factions, and quietly laid the foundation for the empire's rebirth. His efforts earned him the title, the Restorer. Under his son, Murad II, the Ottomans returned to their former strength, retaking the Balkans, subduing rebellious Beyliks in Anatolia, and defeating another wave of European crusaders at the Battle of Varna in 1444. But the greatest triumph was yet to come. Murad's son was no ordinary ruler. He was raised with a singular vision, to complete what his ancestors had started. His name would become legend Mehmed the Conqueror. In 1453, the moment the Ottomans had waited for finally arrived. Constantinople, the last stronghold of the Byzantine Empire and the spiritual heart of Eastern Christianity, stood isolated, surrounded by Ottoman lands. The young Sultan Mehmed II, only 21 years old, prepared the greatest siege the medieval world had ever seen. With over 80,000 troops, massive bombards cast in bronze, and a navy that bypassed chains across the Golden Horn, he turned a centuries-old city into a cage. The Byzantines fought with desperate valor, but the end was inevitable. After 53 days of siege, on May 29, 1453, the Ottomans broke through the walls. The city fell. The emperor, Constantine XI, died sword in hand, and the last echo of Rome was extinguished. Mehmed entered Hagia Sophia not to destroy it, but to convert it into a mosque. He declared Constantinople the new Ottoman capital and renamed it Istanbul. This was not just a military victory, it was a civilizational shift. The Islamic world now claimed one of Christianity's greatest cities, and the Ottoman Empire had entered its golden era. Mehmed was no longer just a sultan, he was Father the Conqueror. With Constantinople under Ottoman control, the empire transformed from regional power into global force. The city became a jewel of Islamic civilization, rebuilt with madrasas, markets, aqueducts, and mosques that touched the sky. Trade routes flowed through its ports. Scholars, poets, and architects from across the Muslim world flocked to serve under Mehmed II. But he was not done. Over the next decade, he expanded the empire deep into the Balkans, took Serbia and Bosnia, and launched campaigns into Anatolia, Albania, and even Italy. He saw himself not only as a sultan, but as a Caesar, a ruler of East and West. The Ottomans now straddled Europe and Asia, Islam and Christendom. And yet, what made the empire durable was not just its sword, it was its system. Under Mehmed, a centralized bureaucracy emerged: viziers, tax systems, military registries, and the devshirm, a controversial but powerful institution that conscripted Christian boys to become elite soldiers and administrators janissaries. These boys, taken from villages in the Balkans, were converted to Islam, trained without loyalty to tribe or blood, and molded into the most loyal servants of the state. It was cold, effective, and devastating. The Ottoman machine was now built to last. In 1520, the empire passed into the hands of Suleiman I, the son of Selim the Grim. Within decades, he would become known not only to Muslims as Suleiman the Lawgiver, but to Europe as Suleiman the Magnificent. His rule marked the zenith of Ottoman power. Under his leadership, the empire stretched from Algeria to Baghdad, from Yemen to Hungary. He besieged Vienna, defeated European powers in the Mediterranean, and humbled the Safavid Empire in the east. Never before had a Muslim empire ruled so many Christians, Jews, Arabs, and Turks under a single throne. But Suleiman's greatness wasn't only military. He codified Islamic law, elevated art and architecture, and built mosques and palaces that still stun the world today, most notably through his chief architect, Mimar Sinan. His court was a center of philosophy, poetry, and diplomacy. Yet beneath the grandeur, cracks were forming. Intrigues within the palace, especially involving his powerful wife, Hurrem Sultan, and the harem led to the execution of his most competent son. It was the beginning of a dangerous tradition. Sultanic politics ruled not just by merit, but by blood, jealousy, and shadow. After the death of Suleiman in 1566, the empire inherited his splendor but not his strength. His successors lacked his vision, and the complex machinery he had built began to rust from within. Power shifted away from the sultan's hand to the palace bureaucracy, the janissaries, and the harem. Corruption crept into the tax system. Provinces once held by iron were now governed by bribes. The once feared navy suffered a crushing defeat at Lepanto in 1571, signaling that Ottoman dominance of the Mediterranean was no longer unchallenged. Externally, the empire was still vast and dangerous, but internally, it had begun to rot. Sultans ascended the throne as children, manipulated by viziers and palace factions. Janissaries, once elite warriors, became political thugs. Meanwhile, Europe changed. It embraced the Renaissance, Reformation, and gunpowder revolution. But the Ottomans remained tied to old structures. Wars grew longer, costlier, and more inconclusive. The empire was still powerful enough to survive, but no longer agile enough to lead. The Golden Age had ended not with collapse, but with slow, grinding exhaustion. By the 18th and 19th centuries, the Ottoman Empire had become known in Europe as the sick man, a once mighty power now weakened by internal decay and external pressure. Nationalist uprisings tore at its Balkan holdings. Greeks, Serbs, Bulgarians, and Romanians sought independence, often supported by European powers like Russia and Britain. One by one, provinces slipped away. The empire that had once threatened Vienna now struggled to control its own capital. Reform efforts like the Tanzimat tried to modernize the army, schools, and legal systems, but were met with resistance from within. Western imperialism only made things worse. France took Algeria, Britain took Egypt, and Russia expanded south with ambitions of seizing Constantinople. The Ottomans became pawns in a broader geopolitical game courted and manipulated by rival empires in the Eastern Question. Even within Istanbul, the contradictions were visible. Modern trams passed through ancient streets, while sultans ruled in opulent palaces funded by foreign loans. The empire wasn't dead yet, but it was on life support. Kept alive not by strength, but by the fear of what might replace it if it fell. When World War I erupted in 1914, the Ottoman Empire saw one last opportunity to reclaim relevance. It joined the Central Powers Germany and Austria-Hungary, hoping to defeat the British and Russians and regain lost lands. Instead, the war pushed the empire to its breaking point. The Ottomans faced invasion on multiple fronts: the British in Palestine and Mesopotamia, the Russians in the Caucasus, and a multinational assault at Gallipoli. Though they resisted heroically, especially under the command of a rising officer named Mustafa Kemal, the cost was catastrophic. Inside the empire, the war sparked horror and tragedy. Ethnic tensions exploded into massacres. The Armenian genocide, still disputed and denied by many, saw the forced deportation and mass killing of over 1 million Armenians. As the war dragged on, famine struck, morale collapsed, and the once vast Ottoman world was carved up in secret by the Sykes-Picot Agreement, dividing its Arab provinces between Britain and France. In 1918, the Ottomans surrendered. What remained was a shell of an empire occupied, bankrupt, and broken. The end was no longer a question. It was a countdown. In 1922, after over 6 centuries of rule, the Ottoman Empire came to an end. The last Sultan, Mehmed VI, was deposed and fled Istanbul aboard a British warship. The Caliphate was abolished. The palaces were emptied. The crescent banner of the Ottomans was lowered quietly, without ceremony. What followed was not chaos, but revolution. Under the leadership of Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, a new force rose from the empire's ashes, the Republic of Turkey. It renounced imperial ambition, embraced secularism, and turned westward. For the first time in centuries, the sword was sheathed, but the shadow of the Ottomans never vanished. Their legacy echoes across continents, from the mosques of the Balkans to the markets of Cairo, from the laws of Istanbul to the politics of modern Islam. They ruled over Christians, Jews, and Muslims with both cruelty and tolerance. They built, destroyed, reformed, and collapsed. They were warriors and poets, tyrants and reformers. And though their empire lies buried in history, their impact remains. The Ottomans didn't just build an empire, they reshaped the world. And like all great powers, their rise and fall remains a mirror for the empires still standing.